Taking sides, the debate over sanctuary state among California's top cops.
As far as ships go, it was supposed to be relatively inexpensive, but as they've found, the price went up quite a bit, and then also they're getting an inferior product.
Betting on technology and falling short on design. The stormy rollout for one of the newest ships in the fleet. And twice the fun, the pint-sized friend for a tiger cub at the San Diego Zoo. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Ebony Monet. Another key legal development tonight on the president's travel ban. The Supreme Court is allowing the Trump administration to maintain its restrictive policy on refugees. Today, justices agreed to an administration request to block a lower court ruling that would have eased the refugee ban. It would have allowed up to 24,000 refugees to enter the country before the end of October. The justices are scheduled to hear arguments on October 10th. They'll consider the legality of the bans on travelers from 6 mostly Muslim countries and on refugees from anywhere in the world. New compromises made on sanctuary state proposal doesn't go far enough for sheriffs in California. New changes build on the list of crimes under which law enforcement is able to notify immigration authorities. The California Sheriff's Association says it still opposes the bill today, despite these changes.
In terms of sheriffs, we remain concerned about what the real world aspects or what the real world impacts of the bill will be if someone is wanted by the federal government and we are precluded from sharing information that could very well prevent a crime.
The final version stops law enforcement officials from asking about a person's immigration status or participating in immigration enforcement efforts. Meanwhile, the California Police Chiefs Association says it has lifted its opposition following the revisions and now takes a neutral stance. Education officials and students gathered in Sacramento today to support a plan by state lawmakers to set aside $30 million to maintain protections for nearly 200,000 DACA recipients living in the state. Most of the money will be used to provide legal services to Dreamers if they are faced with deportation. Some of the funds will be set aside to provide financial aid at community and state colleges in California. Supporters say too many California students are living in fear of deportation, with many even opting to skip classes.
So this shows that not only on paper are we going to protect our students and protect Dreamers, but we're going to put our resources behind it, and we're going to put the strength of the state of California behind it.
The funding proposal is set to be heard in a state budget committee later today. The legislature has until Friday to take action. San Diego leaders are taking more action on the hepatitis A outbreak. They've expanded the hours of 14 standalone restrooms in Balboa Park to 24 hours. A city spokesperson tells KPBS News it's part of a 30-day pilot project to fight the outbreak that has left more than 400 people sick. It's been linked to poor sanitation among homeless people in and around downtown. And today, the county health department reported another death, bringing the total fatalities to 16. San Diego is set to allow local businesses to grow, produce, distribute, and test marijuana. The city council voted 6-3 to approve regulations for the cannabis supply chain on Monday. Councilman Chris Ward proposed allowing up to 40 of the businesses across the city. He says San Diego voters overwhelmingly approved legalization.
I'm particularly comfortable in respecting the interests of the voters and also trying to make sure that we have supply here that is carefully managed, that is actually grown here. And I think that's actually going to be an increase to our ability to keep neighborhoods safe.
The approved regulations allow cannabis supply chain businesses only in industrial zone areas, set back from homes and schools. Veteran suicide in the state will be more closely monitored under a new bill signed by Governor Jerry Brown today. It will require California Department of Health to collect data on veteran suicides. Lawmakers hope better information will help improve suicide prevention programs.
With that data, all kinds of private organizations and nonprofit organizations in the state of California can better understand how they can help veterans to find an answer to this before whatever it is that is driving him toward that deep and ugly place can find relief and can find help.
California will collect information on how and why veterans may have committed suicide, but also track wars the veterans fought in, what jobs they held in the military, and whether they suffered from brain injury or mental health issues. California is home to more veterans than any other state. Congress is about to decide the fate of the Littoral Combat Ship. The speedy, high-tech warship has been plagued with delays, mechanical problems, and cost overruns. As KPBS military reporter Steve Walsh explains, San Diego is home port for many of them.
The USS Gabriel Giffords is the newest littoral combat ship in the Navy's fleet. I was on board as the ship first arrived in San Diego one sunny morning in July. The LCS are fast, traveling at more than 40 knots, which is basically slow highway speed. One of the things that makes the LCS different from other ships is the propulsion. Instead of a rudder, they have these water jets down here, which make the ship much more maneuverable. It uses technology in place of a larger crew. The Giffords Bridge is relatively empty coming into San Diego. Executive Officer Sean Cowan says the average ship this size would have a crew of roughly 300. The Gabby Giffords has 70.
The destroyer I was on here, we had like 19 people up in the pilot house. The one thing that having only 2 people up here, plus the navigator, does is I think it increases situational awareness because you don't have 19 different opinions. You have 2 opinions, and the captains and the navigators.
5 minutes to turn. Next course is 017.
Despite high marks from the Giffords crew, the LCS program has had a stormy rollout. In 2016, the ship recorded 5 breakdowns during deployment. A San Diego crew was left stranded in Singapore while the Navy reworked the program, dumping some of its loftier ambitions. Gone, an idea that sounds a little like Legos, where the LCS would swap parts in the field to allow one ship to perform 3 different kinds of missions. Gone, a novel way of mixing and matching crews that likely added confusion.
Then they tried to make the LCS all things to all people.
Steve Ellis is with the watchdog group, Taxpayers for Common Sense.
As far as ships go, it was supposed to be relatively inexpensive, but as they've found, the price went up quite a bit, and then also they're getting an inferior product.
In December, a longtime critic of the program, chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, John McCain, grilled the Pentagon about the problems, including the price tag that doubled the cost of the LCS, originally at $220 million when it was first budgeted back in the mid-2000s.
We are going to start holding people accountable. We're talking about millions of dollars here.
The General Accounting Office recommended Congress stop buying new LCSs until they solve the problems. Even so, Congress is considering buying as many as 3 more ships in the upcoming defense budget. In late August, Secretary of the Navy Richard Spencer met with the crew of the Giffords during his first trip to San Diego. He says the Navy is figuring out how to use the new ship.
We're solving the issues as they come along.
And the problems are large. The Department of Defense questions whether the LCS can survive an attack, so the Navy is adding firepower to all the LCSs. Near Guam, the USS Coronado recently tested a Harpoon missile for the LCS. The Navy said the Giffords won't deploy without an upgraded missile system. Defense analyst Brian Clark says the LCS was designed in the early 2000s to patrol areas near shore at a time when coastal waters were often friendlier to U.S. forces. Now, critics say, the world is more dangerous and the smaller, lightly armed ship is more of a target than a deterrent.
The environment has changed such that you need a ship that's able to defend itself to a much greater degree than LCS is able to do.
Congress will have to decide whether to buy more of these ships before the program ends. This summer, the Navy turned its attention to a different kind of vessel. It began asking for proposals for a new frigate, better suited for the more dangerous environment the Navy faces today.
The lessons would be don't try to accelerate something like a shipbuilding program where it's going to last for a long time.
Clark says the Navy moved too quickly from design to building and bet on technology to catch up, but it didn't. It's a lesson that the LCS's critics hope won't be repeated as the Trump administration moves to expand the Navy in the coming years. Steve Walsh, KPBS News.
A $110 million new building is going up on the campus of UC San Diego. KPBS science reporter David Wagner has this report from the dedication of Tata Hall.
Indian philanthropist Ratan Tata put his signature on a construction beam for the new 6-story building, which will house biology and physical science labs, including the Tata Institute for Genetics and Society. Chancellor Pradeep Khosla said Tata was inspired to establish the Binational Institute after learning of UC San Diego researchers' work to create mosquitoes genetically resistant to malaria.
And he just fell in love with this whole notion of the ability to do gene editing on steroids.
Administrators said the building will also help connect undergraduates with more hands-on research in neuroscience and sustainable energy. David Wagner, KPBS News.
As Americans get closer to sharing the roads with driverless cars, there are new guidelines coming from D.C. And the National Transportation Safety Board recommends the government define standards for automakers. While Transportation Secretary Elaine Chao was in Michigan today backing voluntary rules for self-driving cars. These were an updated, scaled-back version of the proposals released by the Obama administration.
It offers a path forward for the safe deployment of automated vehicles by, 1, encouraging new entrants and ideas that deliver safer vehicles. 2, making department processes more nimble by creating a flexible framework to help match the pace of private sector innovation.
NTSB, on the other hand, is recommending even stricter regulations.
I'm Judy Woodruff. On the next News Hour, our series Rethinking College continues with a look at training coal miners for a new economy. That's Tuesday on the PBS News Hour.
After last week's heat wave, a welcome cool down ahead for San Diego with low clouds and temps in the 70s. Aaron Calandra has more in tonight's forecast.
We had a beautiful day here in San Diego. Taking a look at our satellite and radar for the last couple of hours, very light showers, maybe a pop-up storm here or there, but those showers and storms are going to be even less as the week progresses. And by the weekend, it should be pretty dry if we see any at all. Taking a look across the region, we do have some moisture to the north of us, so we are seeing showers and downpours in Nevada, even in San Francisco. Now, that is a bit unusual. For tonight, our temperature 69 degrees with clouds increasing throughout the night. Of course, when you wake up along the coast, it's going to be pretty cloudy out there, but eventually we will have a beautiful day. So for tonight, Oceanside 64 degrees for the low, Poway 66, San Diego 69 degrees. So a very comfortable, beautiful night ahead of us. Borrego Springs 76 and Mount Laguna 58 degrees. Tomorrow, beautiful sunshine for pretty much everyone. Borrego Springs 100, Mount Laguna 73, Ramona 82, and Alpine 81 degrees for our high temperatures. Here in San Diego, 75 degrees. Here's a look at the big picture. This is the low pressure system that is spinning here right off the coast, and that's bringing in some moisture that's allowing places like San Francisco to have those thunderstorms. Taking a look at the coast for the next couple of days, it's going to be a bit cooler. On Friday, we could have some mist in the morning and a high of only 73 degrees, and then Saturday, some low clouds, and we're back up to 75. Inland temperatures on Wednesday at 82, but then we drop it down to the upper 70s on Thursday and Friday, and then Saturday and Sunday a beautiful weekend in the low 80s. In the mountains, it's going to be cool, 65 on Thursday for the high temperature. By Friday, our low 48 degrees, so certainly cooling down, but we'll have plenty of sunshine. And then in the deserts, look at Thursday. What a nice break. Finally, double digits. digits with a high of only 86 degrees and a low of 65. So that is certainly going to be a very pleasant day ahead. For KPBS News, I'm Erin Calandra.
Some NPR podcasters wanted to see if pedal power could take care of all of the energy needs for a home. After pedaling for hours, NPR's Adam Cole found there's a difference between the power you use and the power your body can generate.
To look for answers, I'm here in Rochester, New York. This place used to be the bike capital of America. They even had a national magazine about bike paths. And it's the home of University of Rochester astrophysicist, blogger, and NPR contributor Adam Frank. He's going to help us figure things out. Hey, Adam.
Hey, Adam, how's it going? So the first question is, how much energy does my house use anyway? I mean, there's the lights, the air conditioner,
the microwave, the dryer,
the refrigerator,
the water heater.
And it all adds up to about 900 kilowatt hours every month.
So where does that energy come from?
Coal, burned at this Rochester power plant. And water that turns the turbines at this hydro station on the Genesee River. Could Adam here generate that energy instead? After all, before the Industrial Revolution, we all depended on the power of humans and animals.
So let's get set up. Adam's legs turn the wheel. The wheel hooks up to the generator and turns that motion into electricity. And that electrical energy is stored in the battery so that I can use it later on even when Adam isn't pedaling. Now, if Adam's gonna power my house, just like that power plant, he's gonna need some fuel.
This is the garbage plate, a Rochester delicacy. It contains about as much energy as a cup of gasoline, roughly 2 kilowatt hours.
Unfortunately, Adam's not a very efficient machine. He can only convert about a quarter of the fuel he eats into energy. And some of that energy is just going to, keeping him alive. His lungs breathing, his heart beating, his digestive system digesting. With the energy that's left, an elite cyclist can generate about 0.4 kilowatts for an hour. But Adam, he's not an elite cyclist. And I need him to go for a lot longer than an hour. If he pedals for 8 hours a day, the best he's going to be able to maintain is about a quarter of what the elite cyclist can do. And that sums up to about 1 kilowatt hour per day.
That would be enough to keep this lamp going, but remember,
For our whole system, it's inefficient. Some of that energy gets lost on its way through the generator, and some on the way from the generator down to the battery. So at the end of the day, there's only about a half of a kilowatt hour in the battery. If he pedals all day for a month, scarfing down 120 garbage plates, he'll store away a grand total of 16 kilowatt hours.
the same amount of energy in half a gallon of gasoline.
Remind me, how much does your house need again?
900 kilowatt hours per month.
It would take 50 atoms pedaling over time to power my house. And it would take the entire population of New York City to power every house and business in Rochester.
And that, Bookie McReader Pants, is why you can't power your house with a bicycle.
Imagine a world where you find a tasty-looking recipe, gather the ingredients, and simply press print. In tonight's SciTech Report, producer Maggie Orton introduces us to an engineer and his culinary quest to make 3D printed food a reality.
Seems like it works.
Actually works at that power.
When Columbia University engineering professor Hod Lipson envisions the kitchen of the future, he sees 3D printed food cooked by a laser beam. And based on research being conducted in his lab, that reality may not be far off.
People always wonder, will 3D printing ever make it to people's homes? Will people want to use a 3D printer at home to make things? And actually, if you think about this, most people don't make anything at home except food.
Lipson points out that cooking, unlike many areas of everyday life, hasn't changed much with the advent of computer software, but he thinks it will.
So, we started with this work about a decade ago. In the beginning was a sort of a frivolous activity. We would really focus on printing with engineering materials, but we would test the printers with chocolate, with peanut butter, with cookie dough and things like that. But we soon realized that actually printing in food is more than just a frivolous activity. It's actually very interesting. It has a lot of potential, both for making novel kinds of foods, but also for making more healthy foods, because you can start controlling the food content using data.
Data about a person's body and health. This information could be used to find and print the ideal meal for his or her needs.
What will happen is all of these biometric devices that you wear, your iWatch, your personal genome that's online, that's been sequenced, all that information, all that data will feed through various AI systems that will be able to recommend what you need to eat that morning.
In other words, information about a person's DNA, nutritional intake, or daily habits would provide a blueprint of what should be in his or her food. The user could then, for example, look up a meal that meets those needs. Cartridges filled with various ingredients would be combined automatically following the recipe's instructions. Lipson says the implications of this could be huge. Imagine running a race having eaten a scientifically selected breakfast to maximize energy, or being able to precisely implement a doctor's dietary recommendations. Beyond that, people with limited access to food could use what's available to them in different ways. Food waste might decrease by people only making what is needed, and the ability to create a favorite chef's recipe could be right at a user's fingertips. Cooks could even get creative with presentation. For example, this walnut and sesame paste is printed in the shape of a pyramid. But in his research, Lipson quickly discovered a barrier to entry he didn't anticipate. People like to eat food they can identify.
In the first couple of years, we started exploring this idea of printing with more food sciencey materials. The sort of unpronounceable ingredients you see in some foods that you buy. But we quickly abandoned that because we saw that with a machine like this, we can create incredibly interesting foods that are food safe, they're even healthy, but nobody will want to try them. They were sort of crazy, purple cubes that tasted like broccoli with a milk texture. So we scaled that project back and we went and continued to work with basic ingredients like oil and water and flour and butter and chocolate, and things that people recognize.
Another challenge, the printer relies on food design software that doesn't fully exist yet.
Most of the design software that's out there is for editing images or for editing engineering drawings, but not for editing food. So we have to basically develop this whole ecosystem of software tools that can do that.
Primarily, Lipson and his research team are focusing on perfecting the printer itself. While there are a few 3D food printers on the market now, they're limited in what they can do. Lipson wants the printer he's developing to be able to switch automatically between a number of ingredient cartridges. So far, it can only handle up to 8. The final product needs to be consumer-friendly, too.
This is one of several printers that we have, and we've built multiple printers over the years. One of the things that we've noticed is that when we take this sort of lab contraption into a chef, they will look at this and they say, this is great, but no way will this ever make it to market. We're never going to have a thing like this on a kitchen counter. When we think about how a food printer might actually look like when it is on your counter a few years from now, it will look more like an espresso machine. It will be stylized. All these devices will be hidden.
Lipson has a prototype of what that could look like, but there's still a long way to go. Meanwhile, he and his team are working to expand the machine's functionality so it can cook food as well as print it. This would allow them to, for example, not just print in cookie dough, but also bake the cookies.
We are not only working with new kinds of ingredients, but new kinds of cooking processes. So not just conventional heat, but also infrared light bulbs, lasers, and so on. And these sort of combination of the ability to integrate lots of ingredients and cook them in a software-determined way really allows us to explore a new food space. Frankly, I'm really looking forward to the sort of kind of culinary innovation that we'll see when this then becomes ubiquitous.
The Bengal Tiger cub that was seized during a smuggling attempt at the border last month now has some company. The National Zoo in Washington, D.C. sent a 9-week-old Sumatran tiger cub to the San Diego Zoo Safari Park. Zoo officials say the cub was rejected by his mom and decided the best place for him was here, where the two orphans can learn to be tigers together. The tigers are just a few weeks apart in age. A monitoring group says the Sumatran tigers are critically endangered, with only about 300 to 400 living in the wild, while Bengal tigers are endangered with about 1,700 left. A trio of sea turtles returned to the ocean after nearly 3 years. They were found cold stunned and facing trouble floating and finding food. Marine life experts say they're now good to go after spending time in a rehabilitation pool at SeaWorld.
After months and months and months of work rehabbing sea turtles, and we've now just put 3 olive ridley turtles back in the ocean. An unbelievable success. My heart is just bumping so hard. It is the culmination of so much hard work, and now these animals are getting that important second chance at life.
Scientists also placed trackers on the turtles to monitor their movements. Now, here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. Pedal Power, the new bike share program in Imperial Beach. And on Midday Edition, 1-2 Punch, the boxing match that's anticipated to be a huge hit. That's tomorrow at noon on KPBS Radio. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.